Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1, action.
Assume nothing.
Brash, bald-faced blasphemy.
Question everything.
I find it extremely hard to imagine.
Open your eyes.
It is quite all right to be an atheist.
The fastest growing group of people in the country has been measured as being those who have no belief or who are atheists.
You don't have to be apologetic or quiet about it.
Challenge the opposition.
You see religion on 100 fronts losing the argument.
And start thinking. This is the Thinking Atheist worldwide.
This coming Saturday in Denver, Colorado, I'm going to be out there at the Colorado Secular Conference. And if you are anywhere near the Denver area, you got to come out. It's going to be beautiful country anyway. A lot prettier than Oklahoma. And I like Oklahoma, but it's going to be really something. Catherine Stewart's on the lineup. Sean Faircloth is going to be there. Rebecca Hale, Betsy Weatherhead. A whole day planned on Saturday for like $20. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity to shake your hand. And then coming up on the 31st, we're going to be in Clearwater, Florida, and a huge fall schedule that's just overwhelming. I have to write it. I'm at the point in my life where if I don't write it down, it doesn't exist. And I've gone beyond Post-its notes. Now it's the little calendar on my phone. If that thing doesn't ding and give me an hour notice, I'm not going to be there. So I've got the Colorado Secular Conference on my calendar. It's going to be an awesome time. And I'm unveiling a new video to the audience this coming Saturday. And I'm hoping the reception is going to be good. Today's guest is honestly something I never thought would happen. I spent 10 years at a Christian radio station in Tulsa, Oklahoma called KXOJ. And that was back when I was a believer. I mean, I was a true God believer. I believed the Bible. And obviously those days are over. My life has really sort of taken another turn. I came out of sort of that gauntlet with a whole new perspective. And I was contacted by my general manager and the owner of KXOJ. And he said, hey, look, I'd like to go on the radio and talk about Jesus and God and my perspective. And, you know, my first thought is, well, what do you really want? But, you know, we had a great, I called him up. We had a great talk. We actually had a chance to sort of get some water under the bridge. You know, and I'll mention this to Dave in a second, but we didn't leave on great terms. We were both a little younger, a little less wise. We both had 10 years of being very strong personalities and that kind of thing. And anyway, we sort of had the chance to be able to just talk like real people. So anyway, he joins me on the show tonight. A quick intro. He's the owner of Stevens Media Group. They're in New York and Oklahoma. They have 22 different radio properties. They're on social media, marketing, video production. He's also the founder of Beliefchangers, and it's an organization that's dedicated to helping people discover the reality of a moment-by-moment relationship with Christ. David Stevens joins me tonight. Thanks for being on the show, man. It's good to have you.
You're welcome. Seth, I appreciate you having me. You know, the one thing I will say is that in retrospect, you working at a Christian radio station and us parting ways, that at least with you as an atheist now, that was a good move.
You're like, you know, that may have been the right choice. Well, I didn't see that train coming at the time. You and and I'm not going to dredge up old wounds. The truth is that I was burned out and tired, and I was a very strong personality, and you're a strong personality, and our last conversation on my last day was not necessarily a positive one. But honestly, after some time and I had a chance for the dust to settle and to get some perspective, I realized that if I had been you, I'd have fired me. I mean, I don't know. I think radio does that to you. It's a wonderfully rewarding and amazing creative field, but it's also a field of strong personalities, often strong ego, and even stronger insecurities. You put all that in the mix. And so anyway, I was honestly glad for the chance to talk to you after all these years and just say, hey, hope you're doing well. Hope the family's doing well, you know, because that's really how I feel. I don't really feel any animosity or bad blood at all. Which wasn't the case in 1999. It was pretty hot.
Well, that's a prior century. So,
yeah.
You know, at least the end of the matter is always better than its beginning.
So you must look at me, David, and just think, you must wonder what happened to me. What happened to this guy? You must look at me and think he spent 10 years on the flagship, 7 years hosting the morning show. He represented us and Christ for all this time, and now he is helming an atheist website and radio show. I mean, do you cock an eyebrow at me and just wonder what the heck happened, or what's going on in your head?
Well, not to be honest with you, I really haven't given it a second thought. I mean, in the sense that, we all have our ability to choose in life, and to me, it's.
Oh, come on!
I've seen a lot.
Come on! Someone says, "Hey, Seth is now an atheist." You didn't give that a second thought?
No. I think I found the fact that no one told me that you're an atheist. I think I came across it, but. Oh. You always had that skeptical part about you. You always kind of had that mindset. So is it anything that I ever thought would actually Seth's going to become an atheist sometime? No, I mean I never thought that. But it's not so. Now, if Rick Warren became an atheist, yeah, that'd be shocking. But someone like you that kind of always had that skeptical aspect to you. No, not really.
Would you substitute the words? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, we've had the opportunity to talk, and I kind of get your feelings, and there's always a story behind it. I mean, nobody wakes up one day and just makes that decision. I mean, no one wakes up one day and just makes a decision the other way for Christ. I think it really comes down to there's always a story behind it, and what we do is we too quickly judge people and don't listen to the story. And the story will always make sense. And at that point, once we understand, once I understand where a person's perspective is coming from, the reality of it is I might not be doing or have that same belief if I went through that same experience or the same beliefs that I have now. So I'm always sensitive to that because your story is your story. It's your own journey. But what's encouraging and exciting to be able to do is to have conversation when you do have people with different views or opposing views, and be able to sit down and have that without getting to the emotional mudslinging that gets in there, because you never really can get to the root of the issue as far as what you believe or what I believe when it's like that. And so hey, there won't be any mud thrown here from me, and unless you get too surly, and then I'll throw some back.
I want everybody to know, by the way, there are little pockets of thunderstorms all around my city as I host the show. So if lightning were to strike me in the next 60 minutes, it will probably only be due to the sheer righteousness of my guest on the radio tonight. the power of Yahweh.
Let's put it this way. It won't be hitting me.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Well, you are a true Christ believer, right? I mean, you're a true blue. The Bible is the inerrant, perfect word of God. Jesus came 2,000 years ago, kind of Christian. I mean, you want to spell it out for me? Where are you at?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be everything that would be the. I'm not going to stereotype's not the correct term, but that idea of the main truth, the greater truth. Yeah, I'm right there. I believe in God. I believe that. In the Holy Spirit. I believe in Jesus. I believe that Jesus is the Son of Man. I believe that he came to this earth and died and to do for us what we couldn't do for ourselves, and that he went to heaven, and that I've invited him into my life, and he lives there moment by moment. So, yeah, I mean, at that, if that's as you just define a Christ believer, sure, that's me.
How did you get there? I mean, why Christ? Why Christ over any other deity? Why specifically the Bible and the biblical story of Jesus?
Well, we talked a little bit about this. Both of us growing up in Oklahoma, this is the buckle of the Bible Belt. I mean, we're in the United States. We grew up at a time where Christianity is if you want to call our nation bent more that way perhaps than it does now. So going to church was not out of the norm. I mean, we didn't have baseball practice on Wednesday night because of church. It's not that I went to church on Wednesday night. It's just at that time they respected it. And so growing up in that at a very young age, I made that decision for Christ. But I think as I moved forward in life and I saw various things, I and this is kind of what you and I have discussed in the past, I feel like there's a lot of similarities between myself and someone like you as an atheist. In fact, at times I feel like I probably in my journey I have, and this is going to sound really strange, I have more in common with someone like you than perhaps someone that's sitting next to me in church.
Well, okay, qualify that, meaning that most people are doing it wrong, or is they're caught up in religion? Is this the religion relationship thing, or where are you going?
Well, I think it's the sense that at some point in your life, no matter what you've been told, you have to discover for yourself that is it genuine or not, is it real or not, and so every person goes down that path regardless of what that is. It could be religion. It could be, what does love really mean in a relationship with another human being? So you have to come to your own conclusions at some point in your life. And I think that everybody's got a story and a journey that they take in doing that. And it typically comes as a result of being, life kind of beating you up a little bit, and you're moving through, and all your ideological ideas that you had when you were younger perhaps aren't as, you have to turn and become more pragmatic. And so, for me, I think that you and I, we probably saw the same things. We saw some inconsistencies in our faith. We saw some things that didn't make sense. We saw some hypocrites. Perhaps we even saw the times that we were hypocritical. And I think that what happens is that you and I go down, or you and a Christian, myself, and an atheist go down the same path. And lo and behold, we get to a fork in the road where we have to choose the direction to go. And for somebody like yourself or an atheist, you're going to choose one way and become a skeptic. I, on the other hand, chose the opposite way and became a contrarian. And so I consider myself very much of a contrarian when it comes to the Christian faith, not the basic tenets of the Christian faith, how you become a Christian, all the things that I mentioned earlier. But I think about how it becomes real is very, very different than what is currently taught, or is currently the perception is, or perhaps the very thing that you and I ran away from.
So everybody else is doing it wrong. I mean, is that where I'm going? Here's the challenge I have is that if you and I are both growing dissatisfied with the tenets of Christianity, or at least let's call it the religion we were raised with, and we'll just say it more broadly like that. In some ways, you are also a skeptic if you choose Christianity over, say, another religion or another deity. You have been using a series of guidelines to sort of determine which religion you're going to accept as true. I mean, so you're being a skeptic in your own way. Would you agree? I mean, are you skeptical about Islam? Are you skeptical about Buddhism? Are you skeptical about Scientology? You probably are.
Well, first of all, we're ruled by our definitions. And so, have you ever been reading in a book and you come across a word you can't pronounce, you don't even know what it is, and you just kind of skip over it and try to figure out in the context of the sentence that you just read what it means. We are limited by our definitions, and I think the first thing that I would go to is we need a definition of what religion really is. And to me, the dumbed down version for me is it's mankind's way of dealing with God. Now, you can call God Jehovah, you can call him Allah, you can call him Buddha, Muhammad. You can call him Zeus, or for that matter, call it the universe. But human history, to say that, to be anti-religious, or to say that religion is and this idea of dealing with God is not something that every generation since the beginning of time has dealt with, would be on the wrong side of history. And so the reality of it is all throughout history, there's been religion. And that is, again, mankind's way with dealing with God. And this is what I would say is that atheism is a religion. And the reason is that look at the characteristics of every religion. Okay, the first thing is there has to be a way to deal with God. Okay, we've talked about that. Second is there's always a center or core beliefs that the teaching centers around. there's always the reliance on others to pass information. You typically find religions of various different ways meeting together, whether that's in a church, a mosque, whether that is a group of people getting together in an atheistic meeting. There's always a deep reliance on teachers. You need to have what you would call your mentors help you understand the truth. There's always a written code of conduct to follow. And in atheism, it's really science. And that is where we came from. There's an explanation in religion of how we got there. It answers questions about the afterlife, or deals with that, and ultimately explains right and wrong. And
I'd like to jump in.
Look at atheism. Yeah, if you look at atheism, it's really a religion, because it's all focused on how do I deal with this concept or idea with God. You've just decided there isn't one. The other religions have said there is.
Well, one of our catchphrases is that atheism is a religion like off is a TV channel. It's not. We don't have holy books. We don't have deities that we worship. We don't gather together for prayer. We don't erect temples on every corner. We certainly don't take 10% of your income. If atheism is a religion, where's my tax exempt status? That's what I'm. And if a gathering of like-minded people is automatically a religion, then you're going to have to go down to any group, a chess club, a sci-fi convention, a square dance organization, and call them a religion as well. And I don't.
Here's the go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'd like to hear the response.
Well, the difference between all that, the square dance club and all that is that you're having to deal with God. I'm going to think of it this way. An alcoholic can be controlled by alcohol two ways. He can be driven to drink or driven to stay away from it. When he really gets victory over alcohol is when he wakes up one day and he goes, I don't want it.
Well, I think
the thing of it is that an atheist is just as controlled about the idea of God as anybody that's in religion.
I think
it's just that your idea or concept of God is that he doesn't exist.
I think the people in free thought, in skepticism, people who call themselves agnostics or atheists, quite often hold up their hand of disagreement in the wake of religious teaching, not because they are slaves to the information or slaves to the religion in some way. It's because they are vehement, adamant about exposing something that has been proven demonstrably false and they consider damaging. If someone comes into a room and they say the earth is flat, and there is overwhelming scientific evidence that the earth is not flat, and somebody raises up a hand of disagreement and says, hey, wait a minute, this is not correct, and they do battle to try to see the truth win, or to at least see the evidence, the proportion of the evidence win, it doesn't mean that they're angry. It doesn't mean that they're a slave to the flat earthers or the flat earth Bible. What it means is they simply have better information, and they are wanting to do battle against what they consider to be poor information, especially information that's being taught to the very young and very impressionable. And the idea, I disagree vehemently with the idea that people who are non-believers are somehow still obsessed or slaves to religion. Many of us are compelled to go out and speak out against the faith that we were sort of dipped into from our earliest memories. You came from a Christian home, right? If you'd been born in Saudi Arabia, would you be a Christ believer? Would you be a Christian today, or would you be a Muslim?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up. The one point that I would make about what you said as far as or alluded to the focus. I'm like, whatever has your attention has you. And so if an atheist is talking a lot about God, you're not talking about Zeus. Why aren't you talking about Zeus?
Well, Zeus is not the predominant deity in America. Zeus is not the deity that our politicians are standing on when they run for public office. Zeus is not the God that people are pledging to at the Pledge of Allegiance, which began as a secular pledge, by the way. Zeus is not the God being worshipped on the church on every street corner in this city. The Christian God is.
Well, sure. Here in America, and I would beg to differ with you that our society is far more secular today, and that there is a less than a Christian mindset than perhaps there was when we were growing up.
Look,
But
is
going
there
back
a
to your
Zeus
question
book? Is
about
there a
the-
book celebrating Zeus in a book in every hotel room in America? Of course not. It's a Gideon Bible, a Christian Bible that's about the Christian God. So the God normally focused on here is the Christian God because it is the God that most influences our culture.
Well, see, and here's the thing. This is the thing that I think that where I make the distinction is that what you're rejecting is the Christian religion. You're not rejecting Christianity. But hear me out with what I say by that.
All right.
If I go back to my definition that religion is really mankind's way of dealing with God, I want you to think about all of human history, and that's really what it's been, even with the Zeus. When you go back to the Greek gods, all the way through human history, religion has been about mankind trying to fix himself or right himself with God. Even if you go back to the nation of Israel and to the Jewish race, there was that idea of what I have to do to make sure that that I'm square with God, that I'm okay with him. But the reality is that if you're God and you're looking at all of these religions and you're thinking none of these religions can ever in any way make sense of me, the only option that you would have is to work it in reverse. And so Christianity really is God's way of dealing with man. And see, that's the distinction, and that's what I think that I ran away from, was the Christian religion. Because when you try to stick Christianity and make it a religion, again, my definition of religion, mankind's way of dealing with God, when you try to take Christianity and the tenets of Christianity and do them in your own ability and look at it and think it's all about you, it's the worst thing that you could, the Christian religion is the worst religion you could have picked because it's impossible to live. And I think I got to a point where I looked at that and I said, well, the Christian religion is impossible to live. Because I see this in other people, I see this in my own life, it just doesn't work. And at one point there's a reality in me, and that's when I went to that's what I would say the contrarian view is that my contrarian view is that, wait a second, instead of focusing on what I have to do to right myself with God, what would happen if I focused on what he's doing to right himself with me? And if you think about Christianity, and if you read about it historically, here's what you'll find. You'll find it's the first way of dealing with God that people would actually leave their tribe and the religion they grew up with and go pursue it. Back in the time when Christianity began, you never saw that. Wherever you grew up, that was the religion that you had, and it's very tribal. But all of a sudden, Christ comes, and there's a new way of dealing with God. And now you've got people from all over the world in that area coming to know Christ. And so really Christianity is the most inclusive religion or way of dealing with God. It's far more inclusive than religion.
Well,
because religion includes, but Christianity says you can come to me. So my focus is that, okay, what would life look like? From what would Christianity look like if it wasn't about me having to live up to a certain standard, but rather it was the life inside of me that I've invited in, Christ doing that living through me? Now, what would that look like?
I'm in
the
position
when the whole thing changed for me,
where I want to give you enough of the floor to make sure that I really do want your perspective, and I want you to feel completely free to. I never want to trample on whatever point you're making, but I need to go back. I'm going to go way back to the beginning where you said that the history of humankind is religion is our attempt to sort of connect with God. Would that be a fair assessment of what you were saying? We're working to try to connect with the Almighty. But you and I even see this in a different way, because I see the construction of religion, man-made religion, and the construction of deities, man-made deities, as an attempt of primitive humans who had little or no understanding of the world or solar system or universe they lived in, trying to grasp what to them was unknowable. I mean, they saw someone with an epileptic fit and they thought it was possession. They thought the gods were cursing them. They saw premature death and they thought it was some kind of a curse or punishment, natural disasters. If something happened beyond their extremely limited scope of knowledge. Well, God became sort of the convenient answer that they painted into all the cracks. And as our realm of knowledge began to increase, we began to understand the cosmos. We began to understand that the earth is not 6,000 years old. We began to understand that we actually have an amazing amount of commonalities with all living things. Common ancestry makes sense, that we are evolved creatures. We see so much. In the last 50 years, 100 years, we've discovered so much about our universe. Religion has become obsolete. Religion is no longer necessary. We now have much better answers. And the idea of holding on to the scribblings of primitive ancestors from 2,000 years ago who could barely read and write, it was a hugely illiterate time. And the idea that God's master plan for rescuing us would be a horrible torture and sacrifice at a time when proper historical records could not be kept, to be jotted down in conflicting, and they are conflicting accounts in the Gospels, and then subjectively transcribed over 2 millennia by flawed human beings. I mean, people today can't even agree on how to baptize correctly. They can't agree on what color Jesus' skin was. They can't agree on...
But here's the deal. All those things are a Christian religion.
No, they're based in Scripture.
Yeah, I'm talking about from my definition. If we're going on definitions, and my definition as I see it, because remember, you asked at the beginning my point of view. My point of view is that the Christian religion and Christianity are very, very different. Well, and I get a chuckle out of your pontificating, for lack of a better term. So, and again, I say that with a wink and a tongue in cheek.
Go ahead.
But 10 years ago, Seth, science told us that the universe was collapsing on itself. It was slowing down.
Well, it actually
and now
is.
they figured out that it's speeding up and it's expanding.
But understand,
if what you're really saying here is that we have reached the stage of enlightenment. I mean, we're finding out every day we're going to find out.
We have not reached a pinnacle. Science continues to improve its argument whenever the better information comes in. When they turn on the Large Hadron Collider here in a couple of years and we begin to learn more about the Higgs boson or whatever particles that make up our universe, science is going to revise itself. And that's what good science does. People used to think the earth was flat because they looked across a flat plane and said, geez, it must be flat. And then better technology became available. And with better science, we revised and came up with a much better answer. And people always talk about science changing as some kind of a reason to dismiss science as being the best, very flawed, sure, but the best way of determining what is true. And the whole time you're speaking to me about Jesus and about a relationship with God and about this connection, a deep spiritual connection, I can't get past...
Those are all words you're using. Not
all right. Well, what words would you use? Do you have a relationship with Jesus Christ?
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me just make one quick point here. Is that here's what's interesting: the tenets of Christianity about Christ coming into your life and living are the same today as they were 2,000 years ago. In the sense, I'm talking about the major thing. I'm not talking about all the infights that people went through as the church evolved. But basically, the idea of what you read about of the early Christian people writing about how to relate to God and through the relationship with Christ is basically the same that it is now. But what you hang your hat on is that 2,000 years ago, the science of the day looks like idiots today. The science of the day 2,000 years ago, if you brought that understanding of science in to today, 2,000 years later, you would look like an idiot. So here's my question: 2,000 years from now, are you going to look and people go back and look at what we thought was real today in science? Are they going to look at us as idiots?
Well, does the evidence support it?
Probably.
I'll hold to it. I'll hold to the findings of many non-contemporary scientists. If you look at Newton, you look at Galileo, so many of the findings that were discovered and supported by the evidence have stood the test of time. My problem with this...
You're missing the point, though.
But I'm saying the Christ story does not stand the test of time. If you'll allow me to finish the point, the Jesus story doesn't wash. Historians, there is no physical historical evidence for a Christ. There just isn't. The books of the Bible were written 70 plus 300 years after the supposed events that took place. The stories of Christ
in the Bible were written 300 years after the story.
and no one knows who authored any of those books. No one knows who authored any of those books. I mean, for a person,
there's more written about Jesus than any of the people that lived back in that time. There's more written about him, Bible or not Bible, about Jesus than Nero, than any of those people that lived back in those days, in that day.
But just because it is proliferated,
the reality of it is he didn't write anything. He didn't write. You'll not find one thing that Jesus ever wrote about himself. Everything that is written about him is what other people wrote.
Okay, you and I are on the same page. Other people wrote it down long after the event supposedly happened. Are you saying that all of history is all of history that was written back? Okay, if what you're telling me that there's no physical evidence for Jesus, okay, there's more written about Jesus than any of the contemporaries that were back there. So since there's more written about Jesus and you don't think he exists, does that mean that all of human history back then, those people didn't exist either? Well, there are a lot of mythologies.
You're not saying that he's not a deity. You're saying he never existed.
I'm saying there is no evidence. I don't know if he existed or not, but I'm saying that the evidence is not there. We see a lot of assertions. Now, hang on. We see a lot of assertions.
Did Nero exist?
Of course. Well, I'm saying.
Well, how can you say Nero existed? Of course, but you can't say that Jesus. If you don't believe that Jesus was the Son of God, that's fine.
Look, if you're talking about Caesar,
he doesn't exist.
Jesus may have existed as a charismatic figure in history. I had this conversation with Richard Carrier a while back, and it's really unknowable. I mean, the larger question is this: God so loved the world that he sent his Son to save the world at a time when proper historical records could not be kept. In a largely illiterate part of the world, thousands of years ago, this is not omniscience or omnipotence or benevolence. You and I, even today, should not be having this discussion. We should not have to say, did Jesus exist? Quite frankly, there were a lot of echoes of Jesus or other gods in the Jesus story. Many of the gods that predated Jesus, the pagan gods, they had a virgin birth. They were visited by wise men. They came to earth in human form, visited the temple. The story of Noah in the scripture is actually a ripoff of an old Sumerian legend. And just because something has existed for perpetuity, has been around for hundreds or thousands of years, does not mean it's necessarily supported by the evidence. Hey, it's been around a long time is not proof.
Well, okay, then let's talk about the evidence today. If you don't want to talk about because you and I can't go back in time. So we can sit here and debate that back and forth, but the reality of it is you didn't live back then, and neither did I. So let's talk about today.
Okay.
Let's talk about the evidence today of Christ, which ultimately comes through a personal story that an individual has. I mean, to invalidate a story that someone has about coming to Christ and to say, oh, that's child's play, would be no different than me saying to you, oh, your story doesn't matter. You were wrong. I don't care what you felt, thought, or experienced. It's wrong. And here's the reality. This is what people are asking today. If you want to get down to it, it doesn't matter if they're atheist, Christian, or whatever. What they want is a life that works. And a life that works comes down to desire and power. And in order to find a desire and power, you have to have a source for that.
And how many times do
you and I get up? Hang on. How many times do we get up and we'll have a desire? You might have a desire to be kind to people, but no power to do it. Or you might have the power to stop smoking cigarettes anytime you want, but no desire to do it. And what Christianity is really about, it's really about not what you can do, it's really about what you can't do. See, the Christian religion is about you and me trying to become something that we can never become. Christianity, as I see it, is more about what I can't do. So I look at it and I go, what I need is I need a life inside of me that can do what I can't do. And there are a lot of things that I can't do. Look at the Bible. I can't turn the other cheek. You know, the only religious writing, period, that's ever phrased this, it's ever had this tenet to it, husbands love your wives, is in Christianity. You won't find that written anywhere else in any other religion. And yet, how many times do husbands, do I come home and think, you know, with Tina, do I really want to love her? Meaning that we're in an argument or whatever. And so in those situations, what I need is that I look at it and I go, here's a sin, and I'm supposed to love my wife, but I don't have any desire and power to do it. Well, that's screwy. I'm not interested in that. And so the Christian religion, I'm not interested in that. But what if I had a life in me that could do everything that was required of me to do?
What if?
And so now I can ask that life. I can say I don't need Jesus' help. I'm not in a what would Jesus do. I'm not in a co-pilot situation with Jesus. Where I am is I'm in a desperate situation where I take a look at my life, and here's the reality, Seth, and you know me. So you know, I mean, you've known me at my worst. If you knew me like I knew me, you wouldn't want to have anything to do with me. I know every hole in my life. I know that's everything that's wrong. I know every failure that I've had. I know every inconsistency in my life. I know every hypocrisy in my life. I know everything about me. And so what I need is I need a life greater than me, living in me.
Hang on.
And see, that's where I think Christianity really is. It's about Christ's life living through me, doing for me what I can't do.
We've got a professional broadcaster. We've got a professional broadcaster who's talking to it, sort of a pastor. So between you and I, we're going to have to try to find some momentum. I mean, I'm about to come out of my chair.
Did you call me a pastor?
Well, I know you had a position of spiritual leadership, so I use the word pastor.
Well, yeah, I have never been to seminary. I've never been to any kind of Christian college.
No, I know you used to guest.
You can call me many things, Seth, but don't call me a pastor.
All right, no pastor. My apology. I'd like to correct the record, as good science does. All right, hear me out. When I hear, I need Jesus to help me love my wife because it's not in me.
I didn't say that.
All right.
I didn't say that.
What did you say? Because what I hear is if I come home and I don't have it in me. I'm sorry. There's an odd delay that's not working against us here. I want to be clear. You're saying that essentially in your weakness, he is strong, right?
Well, and it's not just not necessarily in my weakness; it's in my yielding to him. I've seen in my own life that every time that I yield, it ends up being inside of me. It ends up being better. You're living in deference. You really do live in deference to Christ, and you require Christ to be at your best. Absolutely. If Christ doesn't show up today, I'm hung. Okay. So if you woke up tomorrow and there was no Jesus, would it change the love that you have for your wife and children? No, I'm not saying that I can't love them, but I'm saying that there are times that I can't. And here's the thing. This is what I totally believe. I don't believe I'm better than anybody. I look at the drug addict and think, you know what? I'm not going to judge that person because I could do that very same thing. The person that's addicted to pornography, you're never going to hear me hammer them. Okay, well, I'm talking about personal responsibility now. I'm talking about essentially what is, and I carried it for many decades, and I consider it a slave mentality. This is the wish to be a slave. I am not enough. I must defer. I will defer to my Savior deity, and he will fill in the gaps. He will be my strength. I will lean on him. Essentially, I'm going to take less personal responsibility for my life, and I'm going to hand it over
to my invisible Father in the sky. And I myself, I think
don't agree with that.
If you say
that's not it,
if you say, I can't be my best, I can't be moral, or I can't be as loving as I should be, or I can't achieve my potential if I can't do any of this stuff, essentially you're passing the buck off to your divine Father.
Yeah, but I'm not saying that I can't do that. I'm just saying this. It's either all right or it's all wrong. There's no middle ground.
By the way, if you're going to talk about the scriptures in terms of women, there are some pro-women scriptures in the Bible, but, when we read the Bible objectively, there are a few books on the planet as horrible to women as the Christian Bible. Misogyny, women slaves are worth half as much as a male slave. If a woman touches a guy in the wrong spot while he's fighting another guy, they slice her hand off. They're taken as the spoils of war throughout the Old Testament. The Bible's a lot of things. It ain't a pro-woman book by any stretch of the imagination. And I don't know how any female could defend the scriptures.
Well, what in the world does that have to do with what life is like at 10:07 on Tuesday? I mean, that may sound like it's very highbrow in thinking. But to me, I'm like, at 10:07 on Tuesday or 2:45 on Thursday or whenever, what does that have to do with it?
Well, you brought up husbands love your wives, and I'm simply relating it to the Bible's true take on how it feels about wives and females in general. And if you're going to stand on the scriptures, you're going to have to stand on all of them. Otherwise, you're just cherry picking them. And the Bible that you're standing on is hugely problematic from a moral point of view.
Well, then why don't you set the Bible away? I mean, I'm not standing on the book. I'm not standing on evolution. If you don't believe in Christianity, why are you standing on the Bible?
I'm not standing on it. I'm addressing the scriptures because it's part of our conversation.
How would you like it if I got on here and talked about why everything about evolution is wrong? And I went da 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 da, and I talked all about the evolution. All I'm talking about is evolution and somebody else's stuff. I mean, if you want to talk about there not being a God, I wouldn't use the Bible as a means as a pretext.
Okay, so we don't challenge the foundational book that your relationship is built upon, to the Christian God. We don't hold that book to account because why? And the truth is if there's a hole.
Because I'm not. Here's the reason why. Because I'm not holding you accountable for all the things that are written from an atheistic standpoint. I'm not saying we can't. I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just like, why?
Well, if you and I are talking,
get on here and have the same type of argument. Why are we not arguing the tenets of evolution? And the reason is that it's easy to take the Bible and to turn it in to whatever you want it to say.
Well, how about just saying what's in the thing? I'm not twisting the Bible on its ear. I'm simply saying the content is in there for anyone who cares to look. There are so many people in the audience today, and there are going to be tens and tens and tens of thousands of listeners to this particular show before it's over in archive. A great percentage of them used to be up to their eyeballs Christians, and they were raised in a Christian home like you and I were, and they prayed at every meal, and they prayed before ball games, and they prayed before school graduation even. And if someone said,
Christian religion,
do you believe in God? And they would say yes. And then they took an objective look at the scriptures and the God they represent and realized that it's historically unsound and it's morally unsound, and they walked away. Now, why do you get to serve Jesus, but you give his book a pass? I don't get that.
I'm not giving his book a pass. What I'm saying is that you think you're better. You think you're morally superior. You think you're intellectually more highbrow than anybody else.
No, certainly not.
Hang on, let me finish. You've taken a look at the scripture and you've determined that that it has inaccuracies and it does have mistakes in it. So I've taken a look. Now listen, I mean, you're a pretty smart guy. I think I'm a pretty smart guy. I don't think you have a higher IQ than me. I don't think I have a higher IQ than you. I mean, I think that we're both probably intelligent-wise at the same place. I mean, we're not talking about someone. I've got a college education. I mean, I've been to that. I feel like I got a pretty good head on my shoulders. So it's not that me just just eating out of the trough here of what other people have said. What I'm saying is that I went through the same thing you did. It's just that we've come to different conclusions. So for you to say that the Bible is right, you've never heard me say one time in this entire call that the Bible's right, or the Bible is to the extent that you're trying to say that there's something wrong with it. I've not been defending the Bible. You've read the Bible. You've come to your own conclusions. I've read my Bible and come to my own conclusions.
I'm reading from your website, David. From your website, we believe the Bible to be the inspired, the only infallible, authoritative, inerrant work of God.
And I never said that I didn't believe that. I said in this call. My point is that I'm not afraid to say that I believe that. But what I'm saying is that I've come to that conclusion because I've taken a look at the evidence myself. And so what I'm saying is that when two people who are looking at evidence come up with differing facts, ultimately, differing positions, ultimately history has to render one of them right or wrong. Well, we're not going to be around probably at the end of history to see who was right and who was wrong and to go back and defend it.
You know, I'm reminded.
But the point of it, and here's the point.
All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
Is that you've had a chance to talk about the Bible. About study the Bible, look at it, and you have come to your conclusion. I, on the other hand, have looked at it the exact same way and have come to a different conclusion. So you're not hearing me say that you are wrong for believing the Bible is inaccurate. I've never said that. Now, I can put on my website what I believe, but I didn't put anything on there that said that if you don't believe it, you're wrong.
We're dancing now, David. Are we dancing now? Come on, you believe the Bible is true. And part of the platform of your own ministry says that it's true. And when you speak about God and Jesus in these sort of nebulous relational terms, it's a way for you to move the goalposts so that you don't have to be held to the concrete notions of Christianity. God can be this nebulous friend or father character who does wonderful things in our lives in a way that's completely unprovable. It's completely anecdotal. You would tell me I had a relationship, I had a conversation with Jesus, but it's completely unprovable. And in the arena of anecdotal evidence, it has just as much weight as the person who says they were abducted by aliens. I mean, I can't take that to the bank.
Is it provable? Listen, let me ask you this. Is it provable that I fell in love with Tina?
Yeah, it's provable by your evidence. You can see the evidence of love in your life. Your actions and words provide evidence of that.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. You can see the evidence of love in my life. You can see the evidence of a changed life in my life too. So if you're going to say that you can look at the evidence and see the evidence of my love in my life, now we're getting somewhere. Now you're moving the context to what it really is about is that Christianity should be judged on does it change a life or not. And so we can debate the Bible all that we want, but you can't debate a changed life. And listen, there are extremes on either side. So I'm not talking about the person that thinks that they saw a 900-foot Jesus. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the times that in my life when I've seen him or experienced him work in my life and do something in my life that's just as real as the love that I experienced for my wife or for my kids or anything else that I experience that's not scientific, quote unquote. And so, the reality of it is that I think that Christianity, basically, and the whole concept of God is he wants you to choose.
We're still speaking about God. We're still presupposing that God exists. We're starting here with. What do you want me to say?
Do you want me to say he doesn't exist?
I'm saying
knowing that I believe that he exists.
You're starting from the premise that no matter what's in the scriptures or what have you, that there is a Jesus and he exists, and you say it's not necessarily coincidental that it is because your mother and father were Christian and that you were raised in a Christian area of the country, but it's because you came to it honestly and objectively. Correct?
Well, I'm going to say that played a role in it, okay. But the fact that I adhere to it has nothing to do with my upbringing. Just like if what you said is true, then no one outside of a Christian upbringing can come to know Christ.
Well, I'm
That's
not saying
just
that
not
people
true.
aren't exposed. How many atheists do you know, David? How many people in your life do you know who are atheists right now?
Let's see, counting you.
Yeah, counting me.
One.
Okay, I'm the only atheist. You're a 45-year-old guy. You and I are about the same age. We're both
I'm
young.
46.
We're both young people. That's what I'm trying to say. We're both young, spry, good-looking people. I'm at the age of 46 then. I am the only person in your circle who does not hold to a deity of some kind. How challenged have you really been? How challenged was I when I was raised in the buckle of the Bible Belt with the church on every corner and God on everyone's lips? How challenged was I to truly examine whether or not I'd simply inherited a belief? You know, and if you talk about changed lives, people honestly invoke God and they do the heavy lifting themselves. They thank God for meals that human hands created. They thank God for healing that human doctors provide. And a lot of the stuff that people talk about as far as happy, joy feelings in their heart can be attributed to the placebo effect. The mere notion that something should happen actually makes something happen in their life. This is not proof of a deity. And if I'm looking up at Jesus,
that's the Christian religion.
if I'm looking up at Jesus,
About
Jesus wants me saved, right, David? He wants to save me more than anything. I don't know. Do you hold to hell? Do you believe in an eternal hell?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So you believe that the hell that God created in the first place is waiting for me because I do not believe. And God wants desperately to save me from the hell that he made. And his tactic for doing so was to make himself so incredibly vague that you and I are having to have this conversation more than 2,000 years after he came to earth. Does this make sense to you?
Well, the reality of it is that I don't think it's that vague. And to go back to your notion of being challenged, I don't feel like you've challenged me at all. I mean, I think you've got the same stale arguments. And again, this is in kindness.
Well, if you don't think it's
candidness.
Hang on. If you don't think it's vague, why do more than 4 billion people on a 7 billion person planet hold to a deity other than the Christian one? If God isn't vague, why does more than half of the planet serve another God? If he's that omnipotent, he ain't doing his job.
Is your problem? Yeah, but is your problem with Christianity? Is that what the real problem is?
My problem.
Or is your problem with just the whole concept of God?
Well, I have a problem with superstition as a whole, but I'm speaking Christianity to you because it's our common ground and it's your religion. That's why I'm speaking about Christ.
No, now listen. You're bringing up your own definition. Christianity to me is not a religion. Religion is the ability in me trying to figure out how to deal with God, whereas Christianity is about him trying to figure out him working and dealing with me.
Yeah.
And the thing of it is, Seth, is that, listen, I've not heard any kind of argument that I would think is rational or intellectually based at all. I mean, basically what I've heard from you is that how can I stand on the Bible because somewhere in the Bible it talks about if a woman touches a man in a certain way, she gets her hand cut off.
Well, I gave you a specific example. We aren't going to have the time to go through all the scriptures, but the information in the era of the internet and in the era where we can go almost anywhere within 5 minutes and find vetted, qualified information, historical, philosophical, moral information on almost any topic. We can truly vet the Bible. My concern is I honestly think you're more interested in believing than knowing. You want to believe more than you want to know. I think you have.
I don't think that's true. I think that here's what I would do. I would let's separate the word belief and faith. And let's take the word belief and say that belief. I mean, I know they mean the same thing, but let's just separate them and say that belief is something that you do based on evidence. Okay, so I hop, and faith is something that I do without any evidence. Okay, so when I get on an airplane, if I've never been on an airplane before, does it take belief for me to get on the airplane, or does it take faith? Well, it takes belief. Well, why? Because I've seen airplanes take off and land before. There's evidence there. I've seen on television shows where airplanes have flown. I know people who have flown. There's evidence, whether I've experienced it or not, there's evidence that an airplane flies. Now, if you're in the back when we worked and we're on the 55th floor of our building, and you pushed me out of a chair out the window, and I said, well, I'm going to be able to fly. Well, that would take faith because there's no evidence to support my ability to work out, to be pushed out of a window and be able to fly. So here's the thing. Christ came down and proved what he said. Let's just focus on Christ. What is it that Christ said that he didn't prove or that he didn't do? Every single thing, every claim that Christ made. Now, you can get into to certain parts of it, and that's fine. We can have that at a different time.
Like whether he even existed, we can get into that before we begin using him as the foundation.
Seth, you admitted earlier that he existed.
I know. I'm saying that it's possible he existed. It's very possible. I don't believe that the God-man existed.
It's more than possible. It's an undeniable fact that he lived.
Well, you can say that.
I'm not saying that
you can say that, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's substantiated by the evidence. You know, people all the time will say, well, anyone who looks at the universe around us just knows. And that's a very broad and sort of lofty claim. And
I'm going to go back to the people that were living back in that time. You have no problem believing that all of the people, the Roman emperors, and all the people who existed there, and even the people that existed before Christ that were written about, you don't have any problem believing that those people are there. In fact, you quote some of those.
But
you quote some in your own stuff. You quote some of the ancient scholars.
But as the historians are writing about Caesar, okay, and as they're writing about other historical characters of the day, they aren't saying that they were a God-man who levitated into the sky. They're not talking about talking snakes, talking donkeys, supermen who gained strength from the length of their hair, and calling it fact.
You need to read your history. Every emperor in Rome thought he was a god.
Yeah, he thought he was a god.
They were all considered gods.
But historians recorded objectively the Caesars as men who call themselves gods, not God.
Well, again, my point in this is, to get back to the point that I'm making is that when you look at the claims that Christ made, okay, every claim that he made, he proved. He did. And here's the reality of it. Is that to me, he's got to prove it in my own life. And just as you indicated earlier about my love for my wife is something you can see in my life, you can see Christ's love for me in my life. Now, you might read a book about how to have a better marriage, right? And you can read it all and you can get all that information. But you close that book at 10:07 on Tuesday or 2:45 on Thursday or whenever, it doesn't work. And it's not there. What I need is that I need a life inside of me. And that's just the difference, the distinction that I want to make. I don't care if you believe in it. I'm just trying to make the distinction of the difference between the Christian religion, which is me trying to take the principles of Christianity and in my own ability try to right myself with God.
I get it.
Whereas I believe that Christianity is not about me, is about me being able to say, no, I can't do this, and I make a choice.
Don't make me call you a preacher again. Don't make me call you a pastor again, David, because I'll do it.
I mean, you told me what I... Listen, again, I'd rather you call me an atheist than a
pastor. I know where you're at.
What I am.
You just told me a second ago two things that stand in direct contradiction to each other. The first one is that you believe in hell, okay? You believe in hell. Okay. The second thing you told me is that you don't really care whether I buy it or not, right? I've got to choose my own path. But if you honestly think...
That's exactly right.
If you honestly think I am destined for an eternity of unbelievable torment, and you're a Christ follower, why would what I think and believe not be important to you? I don't get that.
Because here's the answer to that. I want you to think and imagine a circle. Okay, just imagine you drew a circle on a piece of paper. Now draw a line halfway through that circle. On the bottom half of that circle is called the sovereignty of God. On the top half of that circle is called free will, or your ability to choose. If the whole circle was about choice, God would have just wound everything up and just sit back and we'd all be on our own. If the whole circle was about his sovereignty in the sense that he's orchestrated everything, then it would just be where we're robots. And when it really comes down to it, you look at what is the will of God. And Seth, here's the thing. You are smack dab in the will of God. Because the will of God is you make here's the will of God. You make a choice.
Okay.
If you go back and,
look,
and I know you
no,
don't
I need to stop you right there.
Hang on. Wait, let me make this one point.
All right.
Then I'll lay.
All right.
If you go back and again, let's not get into the debate of the Bible because let's stay on this topic, but let me take something from the Bible. The idea that Lucifer fell from heaven and took the angels and those that become the demons. Here's the reality. When it's all said and done, if you believe in the Bible and you believe Christ, everybody's going to be where they chose to be. Nothing that was created that has the ability to choose will be in heaven against its will. Even the angels that were created there, because there was a battle there, and they had the choice of whether or not they were going to stay or go. And so my point of it is that what God wants is He wants people to choose.
Okay,
that's what explains evil.
I've got to stop you. Look, do you think a moral being would ever create and implement something like hell? Unending, unbelievable agony.
Of course I would.
You think a completely moral being would create hell and throw people in it?
Well, how are you defining morality? I mean, is there no justness in morality?
Proportionality doesn't even begin to cover this one. The idea that you'd have an infinite punishment for a finite crime is absolutely tremendously immoral. And I think to myself two things. The first thing I think is this: why forever? Love me or I'll burn you is essentially what God is saying. It's like if I create a being and I create two doors, and in the first door is going to be a place where it's like it's a pep rally for me. Hey, look, it's the pro-Seth pep rally. You're going to come in. The party's going on for the rest of the year, and you can go in this door, and the next door is going to be a fiery furnace, 2,000 degrees. Now, look, I'm going to give you the choice. Would you like to go and have a pep rally for me, or would you like to go inside the fiery furnace? Now, on paper, I've given this person free will, but that choice is no choice at all. God is saying, love me or else, which is not the action of a moral creature.
Yeah, but here's the thing I would say on that, Seth, is you can't find in the Bible where Jesus ever used heaven and hell as a means to get someone to accept Him. You'll never find it.
Why would He create heaven and then say in Matthew, depart from me, you who are cursed, into a lake of everlasting fire? Why would He implement?
I'm not talking about. I'm talking about the individual. I'm not saying that that's not true. What He's saying, I'm saying that He never used. And by the way, the context of who He's talking to. You need to look at the context of who He's talking to. Most of the time, when He's talking about hell, He's talking about self-righteous people.
He's separating the sheep from the goats. Now, belief obviously is part of the salvation experience. You follow the Roman road, right? You must believe in your heart that God raised Him from the dead, and you will be saved. We must confess with our mouths and believe with our hearts, and we will be saved. If we do not do that, because it's salvation by faith and not works, we cook forever. Is this the action of a just and loving deity?
Absolutely, because a just and loving God ultimately has to let people make their own choices.
Why not just vaporize me?
The thing of it is,
why not just vanish me into vapor and kill me and I'll be dead?
Because when my kids rebel at 6 and 9 and they get older and they get at 18 and they go out on their own and they do some crazy things, I don't vaporize them.
Yeah, but you'd never throw them in a furnace, man. You'd never set a house on fire and throw them inside as punishment for something they did, no matter how heinous it was.
Are you saying that Are you saying that your problem is just the fact that there's fire in hell? Is that it? Because here's the thing: if you really believe what you believe, that there is no God, why in the world would you not be happy if you got hell? Because hell is really nothing more than the absence or void of any kind of expression of God.
This makes no sense, David. And it's how I used to speak and think when I was a believer. It's like someone who says, these are the same people who say without God, there's anarchy. Without God, there's no moral structure to the universe, that type of thing, which is ridiculous. If the idea of God...
I never said that.
No, I'm saying that some people say that. And if hell was a party with Christopher Hitchens and Stephen Fry and George Carlin and whatnot, hell yeah, I'll go to hell. Great. If hell is a fiery furnace where people are writhing in unimaginable agony for all eternity, of course nobody wants to go there. And in fact, as a secular moral creature, I must stand up against the concept of such a place, worse than anything ever perpetrated by Hitler or Stalin or Mao or Pol Pot. No earthly tyrant ever came up with anything as hideous and heinous as hell. And the idea that you would worship a deity that would implement such a torture chamber is a little bit alarming.
Okay, well, let me ask you if you'll do this. Okay, let me just put you to the test of what you just said, because it sounds like you don't believe in hell, that it's part of the God. I understand that. If you don't believe in God, you're going to take everything else out as well. I get that.
I'm going to take what out?
If you don't believe in God, you can't believe in anything else. I mean, you're not going to believe in a hell. You're not going to believe in Jesus. I get that. If you can't believe in God, if you say there's no God, then there's nothing that God says can exist. I get that. I get why. I get the reason that you wouldn't believe in hell because you don't believe in God. Okay, this is what I want you to do. This is how you can prove this to me, okay? Because I think you do. I think you do, and I think you have some doubts about it, and here's how you can undeniably prove it to me. I got on your website before we got on earlier today, and I think are you going to Colorado?
Yeah, I'll be there on Saturday.
Okay, here's what I want you to do on Saturday. How many people will be there?
A few hundred.
What do you think? 200. This is what I want you to do. I want you to get down on your knees, and I want you to invite Satan to come into your life. That's what I want. I want you to go. You know what, Satan? If you're out there, I don't even know if you're out there, but there's nothing that I want more than you. If you exist, I want you to come into my life, and I want you to have every part of me.
Why would I do that?
You do that?
Even if I believed in Satan, I couldn't hold to the morality of Satan. Why would I want anything to do with Satan? He and Yahweh have a lot in common in this regard.
Well, let me ask you this: you would get down and invite Zeus? You wouldn't be concerned inviting Zeus into your life, because Zeus doesn't. I'm just saying, look,
Satan, if you exist, please come into my heart and be my Lord for all of eternity.
Yeah, really, sit down and see. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Sit down there and do that. And my point in that is that that's going to give you a good indication of if you've got pause of doing that.
If I ever had pause, it would be because I was culturally conditioned to fear hell. I speak to people all the time who extricate themselves from superstition. And they were so deeply ingrained with fears of hell that it still gives them nightmares at night. And this doesn't mean that they secretly believe in God and the devil. It means that their parents screwed up and taught them a fairy tale that gave them nightmares. And their parents should be held accountable for doing so.
My word! I cannot believe you're saying
to teach
that.
Hell to a child is hugely immoral. The idea that you would say to a child, accept this invisible guy in the sky or you will burn, is hugely immoral. Hugely.
Look, here's the thing, Seth. You don't have to teach kids to believe in God. You just have to teach them not to. I can prove that. Bring any child up, and I'll explain God to them, and they'll believe him.
Oh, please.
Every single child
you do realize
that is out there, every single child has to be taught there is no God.
If you put a child on a deserted island, he's not going to walk out of there, especially with a Christian God. If he thinks maybe he takes a deist position and says, well, I think there might be something greater than myself out there. But I'll tell you, In the age of information, non-belief is the single fastest growing demographic for a reason. And I'll tell you, it's happening with young people, teenagers and young adults, because quite frankly, they are examining the evidence, and they aren't being raised as much in religious homes, and they've got better information than you and I had growing up, and they're saying, screw this. They don't want any part of it.
Here's the reality of that. The years will speak against the minutes. And
what does that mean?
The years will speak against the minutes. You can come up with any idea in the minute. You can come up with any kind of philosophy about how to live in the moment. And that can be, it can be the earth is flat, don't sail too far, you'll fall off. But eventually the years are going to speak against that moment and tell you whether you're right or wrong. And when you're saying that kids are coming in and they are in the light of information in this day and age where they've got better information that they had when you and I were there, were their age and all that stuff, okay, let's let them live. And let's let them see where they are at the end. Let's see if life proves that. If life proves your belief, then by all means, accept it.
I think it's about evidence-based living, isn't it, David? It's about, instead of taking it...
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
It's about evidence-based living. It's about, what does the evidence support? Not, am I going to carry on the belief system of my family and culture, but am I going to go out and be allowed to go out by my family and culture, by my parents, to go out and examine the evidence and decide, what do I buy? And, Francis Collins was behind the Human Genome Project. Now, he's an evangelical, right? He is a true God believer. He believes in Jesus and the Bible. But even he, after decoding the human genome, had to say, look, the Adam and Eve story doesn't work. He came across better information. The evidence was right there, and he was part of its discovery. He said in order for that to happen, there had to have been tens of thousands of people on the earth at the moment of creation. But yet he still believes in the biblical God. His desire to believe is greater than his desire to know. And some may call that admirable.
Well, it's fascinating to me that you use a Christian person to make a defense.
No, I'm saying that he's a believer, and he has had to accept evolution by natural selection as the explanation for the origins of our species.
That's fine, but listen, the end-all and be-all is not evolution for me. And I'm going to bring you back to a third time of something that you said, and you can rewind the tape and listen to yourself say it again when we're done. And that is that there's evidence in my life that I love my wife. And what you're saying is in that statement is that you can look into a person's life, and the experiences that they have are as valid in creating evidence as anything else. And so what you're wanting to do is you're wanting to say that evidence is just strictly related to the interpretation of facts, which science has done a very poor job over human history of constantly getting things wrong.
So you adhere to the scriptures, and you're skeptical of science. It boggles the mind. And I honestly wish you'd give yourself more credit.
I never said I'm not saying that I'm skeptical of science. What I'm saying
you did.
Is that if you look, no, I didn't say I was skeptical. I said if you look at science has gotten things wrong.
Of course it does.
A lot more than it's gotten right. The tenets of Christianity haven't changed in 2,000 years. Now, if there was an evolution of the Christian tenets, and there was more, this is really what we believe now, it was different than it was, 2,000 years ago. Then I could see your point. But nobody doubts gravity now. Gravity is just the truth. That's a fact. From the moment that it was recognized and discovered, from that point forward, gravity's been there. It's just been the law of the land. My point is that Christianity has not changed in 2,000 years. So it's as if it's the equivalent to something that science discovered 2,000 years ago that's just as true today.
Christianity hasn't changed for 2,000 years, except for the thousands upon thousands of different Christian denominations and the thousands upon thousands of different translations. and the Bible translators unable to even agree on the basic meanings of basic words. The idea that it is this rock-solid foundation that has stood the test of time, it's been around a long time. It's a very, very solid and popular mythology, but it is a mythology. And you and I, quite frankly, you and I have outgrown our invisible friends, David. We outgrew the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus, and we've come to a point in our life when it's time for us to take responsibility for ourselves in the real world.
Well, and I think that again, I go back to it. If you're looking for evidence, let's look at people's lives.
Yeah, but you love your wife because you love your wife. You love Tina because she's lovable. You love Tina because she's awesome, because she lights you up, because she's compatible with you.
How about Tina loving me?
Yeah, and vice versa.
I'm not awesome.
I'm just saying, you two are the mechanism that drives each other in this way. No God required, no deity required, no invisible friend required. What you two have works, and it works between you.
Sure. Okay, well, take something else in life. I mean, here's my point. You can't discount the experiences that a person has.
Why not?
And say this on, because if a person had an experience that you've not had, that doesn't invalidate their experience.
Well, look, but not all experiences are treated with the same level of. I mean, look, if someone walks in tomorrow and says that they were abducted by aliens and experimented on, and they're walking around in a tinfoil hat, they don't necessarily get a pass because they believe it and it was a personal experience. Anecdotal personal experience doesn't automatically get respect just because somebody holds it. They're going to have to back it up in some way. Otherwise, it stands with all of the other unprovable anecdotal evidence out there.
Okay, then here's what I have to do, because I made a statement earlier that said, listen, I've come to the realization that the Christian religion is not something that I want, but true Christianity is Christ doing in me what I can't do for myself. So then I would have to tell you all the things that I've been able to do that I haven't really done, in the sense that he is the one that has given me the source, the power, the ability to do it.
Or
you are what you are. Listen,
or you did it.
You are at your worst moment.
Or you did it, and you said God did it. Or you projected your own abilities and your own desires onto God. How many people say, hey, this is God's will in my life. I feel God is leading me. But the truth was, they were simply leading themselves, and they projected God onto whatever that decision was.
I'm not saying anything about what I do. I'm saying about the desire and the power.
Yeah, but your desire and power informs action. These things inform action, so they do affect what you do.
There's a lot in my life I don't have the desire and power to do. There are a lot, and here's my belief. Hey, you are what you are at your worst moment. You don't know what a man is like when he wins the lottery. You only know what he's like when he steps on those Hot Wheel cars in the middle of the night that the kids left out when he's going to the bathroom, or they tow his truck away, or whatever. You are what you are at your worst moment. You can't judge me at what I am at my best, because my true condition is always going to be what I am at my worst. And here's what I am at my worst. I'm arrogant. I'm unbecoming. I'm unlovable. I'm self-centered. I'm greedy. I'm all the very things that I don't want to be. But yet, here's the deal. I get up every day and I look at myself in the mirror and I go, I don't have any, I've got the desire to be different, but I don't have any power.
Wow.
And so so I get up every day trying to put on a suit and go in a success suit and go out and try to convince people that I'm something that I'm not.
I have a real admiration.
One day I realized, you know what? If Christianity is true, then that life has to do for me what I can't do for myself. If it can't, I don't want to have any part of it.
I still think you need to give yourself more credit. But I will say this. When I look at you, I think relatively objectively after the years. I really do. I have a tremendous admiration for you as a moral person, as a family person, as a business guy. I think you are a genius business guy. You have taken what, you and I both know that KXOJ back in the day was essentially a shack in the weeds, right? You remember those days.
With with cows around in the back.
I was doing the live broadcast, and there were cows looking in the windows and scorpions falling from the ceilings, and you and I came from a pretty humble beginning, and you were there, I think, even before me. I'm the early 90s are kind of vague, and I see the success that you've had with KXOJ, with Stevens Media, with the endeavors that you have as a result of tremendous hard work and commitment and overcoming obstacles and business acumen and sacrifice. And I honestly celebrate the good things that are going on in your life. I think it's amazing. And I have huge respect for that in you. It's a gift that I myself do not have. And I don't see God doing it for you. I don't think God blessed you. I think you paid some dues, made some sacrifices, took some risks, put in the elbow grease, and now you're seeing the reward from your labor. It's cause and effect. And when I look at
I agree with what you're saying 100%.
Really? You don't think God reached down and breathed blessings onto your life then? You think it's just like we went out and made the right decisions at the right time? And
No, because there's two things on that. Yeah, I do. I think that because I've got just as many business failures that we don't talk about.
Well, I think all successful business people do have failures.
The restaurant that I did, the strip center that and so that's my point. My point is that I don't see God as a little genie that I rub and I get good things that come out. I mean, to me, you learn in life in the contrast. You never know what hot is unless you know there's cold. You never know that hot unless there's cold. You never know light unless there's darkness. There's contrast in life, and I have to learn life. The contrast for me is in the good and the wrong, the right and the wrong, the good and the bad. I get that. But where I am, and I believe that a lot of the successes are as a result of my effort, just like the failures. I'm not saying that God is wound it up, but what I am saying is this: the things that I know about me that no one else knows. That at my worst moment, regardless of how successful I might be and what my business acumen is or my IQ, I know at my worst moment that I can get angry. You've seen that.
Yeah, but that doesn't nullify that you are largely a hugely moral and good person. I don't think you're defined by what you are when you are at your worst. Everybody hits a dark moment or dark moments in their life. It doesn't define you.
No, but what I believe it does in the sense that whatever I'm doing, listen, I've got a system that says that if I follow A, B, and C in the business world, that I'm going to get success. So I follow A, B, and C, and I get success, and I think, wait a second, that must be a truth. So I follow A, B, C again, and I get success again. Well, I do it a third time, and I don't get success, then obviously it wasn't a truth, because truth is always absolute. It's always absolute. It's not a truth if there's a deviation of it.
Come on, this is a bumper sticker.
I look at it,
every endeavor that you do is situational. All right, go ahead, finish. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So here's my point in that is that I look at it and I go, there are things that I do and I see that at my worst moment, they're not like what I am at my best. So what am I? Am I at my best or am I at my worst?
I'm totally lost.
If it's when I'm at my best, then I have to work hard to make sure that I stay there.
Look, when you go into a business endeavor...
Hang on. If it's at my worst, I have to work hard to try to get out of it. What I'm saying is that, look, what if this life, what if all Christianity is really about, just take the premise for a second.
All right.
What if Christianity really is not about what I do good and what I do bad, but it's really about being in a environment which is too great for me. It's too overcoming. It's too overwhelming for me. That when I find out that the doctor tells me I have a disease and that I'm going to die. And you probably remember that back in '97. Mm-hmm. And realizing, hey, it doesn't matter how good that I am, how moral that I am, that's a crushing place to be in. It's a crushing place to be in to hear a relative's got cancer, or to deal with a family member that's in depression, or to deal with someone that's in drug addiction, or to deal with a friend that you went to college with that committed suicide, or a friend that you went to college with that became a pedophile. I mean, there are all these things that are out there that go beyond my ability as an individual person to live this life right. I look at that and I go, I need a life inside of me that is greater than me to deal with this. And if there's not one out there, I'm hung because I can't deal with it.
So this life is designed to teach reliance on Christ. Would that be accurate? Right? The deck is going to be stacked against you. You know you can't do it on your own. Therefore, you must call up, call out, or at least be a vessel to receive a higher power so that you can do the impossible.
Well, let me give it to you in an analogy. Okay. And you're going to have to.
Well, for Pete's sake, that's what we need is another analogy on this show.
Well, what I mean by this is and let's not argue the Bible. Let's just take.
Let's not argue the Bible.
Things that are in the Bible. No, because we're on a good. Let's just assume here that if the story of Lucifer is correct, and that he is, as the Bible indicates, that he is the one that receives all the glory from all the other angels and delivers them to God. And one day, Lucifer thinks to himself, why am I giving this glory to God? I'm going to keep some for myself. And so that's when all the war breaks out, and then he's cast out and becomes Satan. Okay, I know you think that's a fairy tale, but it's a story of the Bible, so let's just go with it.
Okay.
Now, take us, for example. Lucifer was not created in the image of God. From a biblical standpoint, you and I were created in the image of God. So if Lucifer, who is not created in the image of God, would in heaven would rebel against God and become prideful, what would it be like for me if I was born in heaven in the image of God? I would become even more prideful. So I think what God does is that he allows us to live in this world to beat the self-glory and the self-righteousness out of us. And there's good times and bad times to do that. And just as a baby stays in the womb of its mother for 9 months to be prepared for this world, what if this world is nothing more than the womb that we need to be in to prepare us for heaven? And if that's the case, then everything in this life works for me. So I'm not looking at it going, my life must be going well if things are going well with God. I mean, my life with God must be well if things are going well. It must be bad if things are going bad. I don't look at it that way. I look at it and go, I need good and bad in my life. And that's why there's going to be times when I'm going to be successful. That's why there's going to be times I'm a failure. That's why there's going to be times I'm going to laugh. There's going to be times I'm going to cry. There's times that I love my wife. There's times we argue. Because all of that is there creating in me what I need, and that is to beat the self-life out of me and my own self-reliance and my own glory.
Okay. In some ways, I could take this. Hang on. I've given you plenty of time. I just want to jump in.
You have. You've been extremely fair in this deal, I might add.
Well, I'm trying. I mean, I'm not a bad guy, even though I'm like a heathen. So, but
no, I told you you're in the will of God. If you're in the will of God, you made your choice.
Look, in some ways, I could maybe even go with you in the hey, this is the preparation. In some ways, even if we walked away from the scriptures and all of that type of stuff, and you were going through, right now we're getting ready for the real show, right? This is a warm-up act, where this is preparatory time. And I could go there if we didn't have to speak about hell for those who got it wrong. Because now it's not just a test where, you get an A or a C. Now if you get an F, you go into the meat grinder forever, which seems extremely sadistic. And the idea that God would be so vague about this to require, a business owner from Tulsa, Oklahoma, to have to come on this show and shows like it, or to post a website or whatnot to tell everybody else what God's message is, tells us that God ain't all that great at communicating his will to begin with. If God really wanted all of us to know what he was up to and what we need to be doing, why does he need you? Why does he need anyone like you? It doesn't seem like omnipotence and benevolence to me.
Well, I mean,
if he could solve the mystery tonight,
are you saying need me to spread the message? Is that what you're saying?
No, I mean, God could solve the mystery tonight. He could tap Uncle Seth on the shoulder and say, Seth, man, you screwed up. You totally got this one wrong. Here's who I am. Here's what my name is. Here's what I look like. Here's what I smell like. Here's what I want. Here's the rules. Here's everything that you need. Absolute definitive proof. And while I'm at it, all the other 7 billion people here on this rock, I'm going to show you guys all as well. All the Muslims and everybody else, all the Eastern religions, everybody. I'm just going to tell everybody, clear it up. Boom. Here you go. Here's the rules. Instead, you and I are having to have this conversation in the year 2013. What's that about?
Well, I think the answer to that, I would say, is that, and it kind of goes to a greater point, and that is that why should God give you any more evidence than He's given anybody else?
Why wouldn't God want to give me supreme evidence, irrefutable evidence, undeniable evidence? Why would why is he playing Where's Waldo with the truth, David?
Because at that point, if there's not an aspect of faith in there, then it really is just a wound up universe where you're forced to do what you do.
But you and I don't see faith as a virtue.
But it doesn't take any faith to believe in gravity or even aerodynamics. I mean, you never think about you never think about that.
Look, I jump off a cliff tonight. I fall to my death. I don't fall and land on Jesus. God and Jesus are two different things right now, right? We have writings of Jesus and we have lofty speech about Jesus. A lot of anecdotal talk and
Jesus
pastors.
Jesus never wrote anything.
The writings about Christ. Okay, and I'm saying that the scriptures, being divinely inspired, God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, actually breathed the knowledge into their proxy on earth. So it is God's word. So go with me on that score, if you would. But okay. the idea that right now we're all kind of looking around, arguing over who's got the correct invisible friend, is a bit scary. A benevolent, knowing, loving God Himself should make Himself absolutely clear to the least common denominator, meaning the person who lives in the most remote part of the planet, who has the least ability to understand, should be able to hear the message. And instead, you and I are duking it out here on the radio over the basics.
Well, but Seth, I haven't brought this up because, again, it goes to the scenario where I've not met the person, I can't prove it, etc. But there have been multiple stories that I've heard of where people who have come to the realization of Christ by just looking at the creation, and I'm talking about in what would be considered non-evangelical countries or religious countries, third world countries, if you may. Again, it goes back to a person's experience. It's hard to refute that when someone says, I came to know Him. I just didn't know His name until you tell me what His name was. But yeah, that's the God I've been worshiping.
Okay, well, let me stop you there because I have a point. If I go out and make the argument from complexity, I go out and see the complexity of our world, it had to have been a design. Even if I don't paste Jesus' name on that particular scorecard, but I know that something is out there, then I must give God responsibility for, the parasitic worm that lives in the eyeball and deformed children at birth and stillborn babies and carnivorous animals in the wild and the horrible brutality of nature and all of the evidences of poor design, like, male nipples and femurs and pelvises and whales and stuff like that. If we're going to go out and say, oh, it's complex and beautiful, it must be God, well, then He must also get the blame for all the crap design that is evidenced in our world and universe, shouldn't He?
Well, I mean, I don't know what crap design what you're talking about, but yeah, I mean, it goes back to the very beginning part. You're arguing religion. You're arguing the Christian religion that says that A plus B should always equal C.
Yes.
And even in science, A plus B doesn't always equal C in science.
Look,
study string theory or quarks.
Yeah, string theory has been debunked, as I understand it. But even though science
doesn't fall.
science being imperfect, we still are living in a quantifiable universe where 2 + 2 = 4 until it is disproven. And because it works, we continue to use it. Science works. It's the reason that airplanes fly. It's the reason that open heart surgery is successful. It's the reason that we're able to have this conversation right now on a radio via the internet worldwide in real time. Science made it happen. Religion sure didn't make it happen. Science is the one that's providing the answers and the solutions and all of the good stuff that we're enjoying today. And science provides.
Here's the deal. If that's the case, then science has screwed up the world. Because I look at the world that you're looking at and the world that I see are two totally different things. If you're going to say that there is no God and it's all about science, well, let's just take a look then at how good of a job man's been doing.
Well, I'm not saying that man's not screwed up. Nobody said that man is hugely perfect. I will say that quite often man is religiously motivated. You stop and look at Islam, I mean, stop and think about this, David. The three, according to the Global Peace Index, which sort of assesses nations and how peaceful they are based on how involved they are in world wars and how much crime they have and their prison population and whatnot. The three top countries on that list, it's New Zealand, Iceland, and Japan, are largely secular, non-religious countries. The hugely religious United States is a horrific 88 on the list. And we're the ones who have God on our lips at every corner. So don't paint religion or God onto.
I don't agree that in this country that we have religion, we have that painted on our lips or whatever you describe.
We are two major religious universities in this city, right here, within a stone's throw of here. There's a church on every block from here. There's a preacher on every TV channel from here.
Are we talking about Tulsa, Oklahoma, or are we talking about the United States?
I'm talking about Tulsa.
We were talking about the United States.
But the president of the United States is not being sworn in on the Quran. He's being sworn in on the Bible. We're not talking about taking Scientology tenets out of courtrooms. We're talking about the 10 commandments from the Christian Bible. Christianity is everywhere.
There is far less of the tenets of Christianity in our culture today.
I would agree with that.
There was when we grew up. So
it's still everywhere.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's everywhere. How many people do you know are Christian people that you've met in the last year?
Well, almost everyone in my inner circle is a believer.
No. I'm talking about that you've met. You've asked me about becoming an atheist, and I would be willing to bet that I could find that if we went out into a crowd, if we went to an OU football game and went into the crowd and just started talking to people, we'd find far more people that aren't believers that are.
I wouldn't know until we conducted the experiment, but I would say there were more than there would be 20 years ago. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Look at where society has gone. I mean, we're more comfortable taking the things of Christianity out of our schools, and I'm not arguing any of that, or our courtrooms, or all of those particular things. In fact, from a presidential standpoint, we've moved more from a secular in the last 4 years. I mean, just look at the social issues.
Yeah, which is what our founding fathers intended, by the way. Many of our founding fathers were not even believers. They wanted a separation.
Yeah, but look. Well, but here's the point that I'm making on that is that I'm not sure what you're so concerned about as an atheist, because I think that the balance has tipped your way in this country.
You're kidding.
And here's the thing: if it continues to tip this way, well, let me ask you this: is it more? Has society tipped more secular now than it was 20 years ago when you and I were in high school?
Yes, it has.
Okay, I agree too.
Yeah,
it certainly has. Now, is it moving in that direction? Will it tip more? If we're going to look at past experience and make a projection, we would say yes, because it's really moved that way for many years that predates us. as far as our experience in high school or when we were growing up. So here's my point. How well are we doing?
Well, I don't think you can say that secularism.
How are race relations? Well, I'm not saying secular. I'm just saying if there's no God, then that means that all these great things mankind, we're talking on the radio and the open heart surgery. You want to give all those things to mankind? Fine. You're going to have to equally give them all the bad things. And we're in a society now where you have to second guess yourself whether or not you're going to go into a movie theater.
Well, I think the point I'm making is that there are good people and there are good religious people and bad religious people. There are good secular people and bad secular people. What I'm saying, though, is so often we are told that without a deity, without a savior figure, without some kind of an invisible force in the sky, true goodness is not possible. And I just disagree completely with that. I think morality is good for the species, and I also think that much of the junk that happens in the world is religiously motivated. And I don't know that it's Christianity. We're not going through the Crusades now. We're talking more about Islam and other religions. But I'm just saying that religion's a problem. And this is the era of enlightenment. We're learning more and more. And the more we learn and the more we evolve, the more we come upon better answers, the answers that science provides. Religion's not going to go quietly. They're going to clutch their fingers and they're going to protest and call themselves persecuted. And they're going to say, why can't you respect my faith? Why are you stealing my joy? They're going to do all this stuff. And I expect the fight to get a lot worse before it gets better. But I think, quite frankly, it's a fight that must be had. I don't see a deity as necessary in the 21st century. I think we've grown up. We've grown past the idea.
Well, nothing that you described about that you just reeled off. That's me. Nothing that you described at all have I been standing on defending.
Yeah, and you
as
can.
Far as what you
and we're talking about how screwed up is the world. It's screwed up, and it will probably get a whole lot worse. But I don't think that correlation causation argument holds when it comes to God. I don't think we're talking about God. We're talking about other factors largely. I want you to finish. I'll let you make the point, and I have to get to the switchboard. Otherwise, I will have been remiss in my promise to let the callers get in. But go ahead and finish your point. I want to make sure I'm fair to you.
Well, I mean, if you're correct, and there is no God, then good and bad, whatever happens in this world is hung on mankind.
Yep.
And so all I'm saying is that it ain't getting better. It's getting worse.
Yeah, but we don't live in a world where we just deal in, is it true? Is it real? Not is it convenient? Is it happy? But is this the way it is? Well, we're all we got. And so that's where the solution should begin, in my humble opinion.
Okay. All right. Let's take a call. Let's see if it's my mom or dad.
They're probably thinking, Seth, that guy's off the rails. 513, thanks for waiting so long on me. You're on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Who's this?
This is Mario.
Mario, quickly, what do you have for us tonight?
Hey, I was enjoying the conversation. I think I'm sensing a little frustration on your side, Seth.
No, I mean, I'm pretty good. This is pretty much what our 10 years was like. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I mean,
I'm kidding.
But, David made the point that you haven't challenged him at all. And I'm quoting here, which makes me wonder if he's listening or at least, considering what you're saying, because I get a sense from David, the same thing I get from a lot of the clergy and Christians. They've already got it. They've already made a conclusion, and I think I don't mean to be insulting here, but I think it's a little disingenuous to come across as if reason and rationality is actually going to make a difference, because they've already concluded it's not going to make a difference.
Okay, well, let me let Dave respond to that.
All right.
It's Mario?
Yes.
I'm not really. I'm not really clear on the premise of what you're saying, and I apologize. I don't. Do you mind repeating specifically what you want me to speak to?
Well, how to pose the question?
Let me try,
Right.
Mario, quickly.
All right, go ahead.
Are you
Go
saying
ahead.
that he's essentially operating from a presuppositionalist point of view? He's already started with the conclusion, and even though he has been challenged by me, he asserts that he does not feel challenged by me. He hasn't seen what he considers to be legitimate challenge. And you think that is because he has started with the solution and he's not genuinely being open-minded. Would that be a fair assessment of your statement?
I'd add a little more. It's a little more subtle than that. If you start any process, of thought with a conclusion, and you're dedicated to that conclusion, that belief, then the world is going to want to fit into that. And so if someone listens to you, Seth, and they don't hear it because it's not fitting into that worldview, which they've already concluded it has to fit into. Does that make sense?
Well, but you can say that in reverse. So what you just described about me, you could say the exact same thing about Seth. He's already got a worldview. He's already got a presupposition. Everything has to fit into that.
Well,
I
disagree.
At some point in time,
I disagree with that because Seth is an example of not doing that. You see, he started with that worldview originally, and he broke out of it.
Well, why does that? But how does that change where he is now? Because he started from. Let me ask you this: if what you just said is true, then that means that somebody that started from a secular worldview and became a Christian is just as valid as what Seth's experience is. Is that correct? If Seth goes from a Christian worldview to a non-Christian view, and you look at that as an enlightenment because he was open to new things and new ways of looking at life, well, a non-believer has the same way and becomes a Christian, then he's just done exactly what Seth did in reverse, and so I don't understand the argument.
I think in my own defense, what he's trying to say is that I came to a point when I decided not to start with the answer, right? Mom and Dad and my school and my culture always said that Jesus was real, and that's enough for me. And it was at the time when I didn't presuppose and I started to evaluate the scriptures and the tenets of Christianity and all religions for that matter on their merits. And it was because of that I changed my position. Would that be accurate, Mario?
Yeah, I think that's pretty close.
That's exactly what I did, though. What you just described is exactly what I did. I grew up with tenets of Christianity. I took a look at it and thought, this isn't working. Something is wrong. And so the difference is that you became a skeptic. As I said at the very beginning, I became a contrarian. So my point is that are you saying that you are just smarter than me?
No.
You can come to a better conclusion? Are you saying that your conclusions are better? Because I had the exact same experience that Seth did. It's just that we came to two totally different conclusions.
Well, that would suggest then that reason and rationality really isn't the issue. And there's something else. Well, because for either case, and even Christianity, let me quote something a pastor said in a debate with David Silverman. David Silverman was trying to make a case through argument, and he said to David Silverman, a man with an experience is never at the mercy to the man with an argument, and which is what you said earlier today, because you were talking about your own experience, which you rely on. And Seth addressed that, saying that experience is not sufficient. Because if experience is sufficient, then you have to grant Joseph Smith his validity because he had an experience, and you have to grant Muhammad his experience because, if experience is really what it's about. So if you can't be argued or persuaded through reason and rely on your experience, then where's the dialogue?
Well, how about this one? How about arguments explain everything, explain nothing? I believe that's on Seth's website, Christopher Hitchens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So so what he's saying, what you're saying is that from the quote that you just used is that you're saying that basically experience isn't all that it's cracked up to be. Well, one of your own leaders here is saying that arguments that explain everything explain nothing. And that's the thing, that your attempt to explain everything from an atheistic standpoint, in essence, explains nothing according to one of your own thought leaders, I guess, because you've got him on your website.
I got to move on, Mario.
Okay.
I think you and I can have different beliefs, but we can't have different facts. And I think this is where you and I part ways. And what Christopher Hitchens was trying to say is by coming in and painting everything with a God brush, you're essentially diluting everything that you're trying to accomplish. Science doesn't ever pretend to know everything. Scientists will tell you we're not even close to everything, and the more we discover, the more we know we need to go out and learn. The more answers we get, the more questions we get, and we love the questions. Science is a continuing process. So science does not say that we know everything. Science simply says we are discovering the world in an evidence-based process that continually challenges and vets itself. I mean, scientists aren't all in collusion to kill God. They are hugely independent sources and individuals who are out there processing and challenging and vetting this information to find out one thing. Does it work? Is it true? That's what we're talking about.
Well, but science also will say that it can't. No scientist will say that they've disproven God. There might be scientists that don't believe in God.
Yeah, well, I don't say that.
No, I know, but the point is that even science itself can't disprove God.
Yeah, but you don't prove a negative. You can't. You don't start with what you can't disprove. Otherwise, we can't disprove fairies. We can't disprove.
Well, But you can disprove Santa Claus because outside of children, no one's ever seen him. No one ever had an experience with him.
I don't disprove Santa Claus. I don't disprove Santa Claus. I don't.
Okay,
but I'm saying
don't disprove Santa Claus, then how can you disprove Christ?
I can't disprove Christ. That's not how science works. We start at the other end and add up the evidence and say, does the evidence support? I'm an atheist. It doesn't say there is no God. It says I don't believe in God because the preponderance of the evidence shows no God involved. Therefore, I don't hold a. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But your own tenet that you hold to, which is science.
Based on the evidence, yes.
Based on the evidence, you've said that science doesn't have all the answers yet.
Yeah, but it's the best method we have. It's the best method we have.
Is it possible that you don't have all the evidence? See, you're assuming that you and you're in a finite person, one individual, and the people that you've talked to and studied. You feel like you've gotten all the evidence.
No, not at all.
In that.
No,
what you've done is you've interpreted the facts in a particular way that as you see them. That's what I've done. I'm not saying that here's the difference between you and me. You're trying to say that I'm wrong because I believe in God. I'm not trying to say you're wrong because you don't.
I think what I'm saying is that I examine the same evidence that you did for Christ and Christianity, and I don't buy it. I don't think it's supported by the evidence. It's certainly not anything about you. It's about the tenets of the faith itself that you happen to adhere to. And you and I have come to dramatically different conclusions on this particular issue, for sure. I've got 7 minutes, and I'd like to take 2 more callers. Do you have time, David?
Let's do it.
All right, 509. Thank you for waiting on me. You're on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Who's this?
Hi, Seth. This is McCabe.
McCabe, I've got a limited amount of time, so let's be economical with our words and tell me what you got. What do you think?
All right. Well, first of all, I'd just like to congratulate your guest here because that's, I think, the most heated I've ever seen you, Seth, be.
I didn't think it was heated. I mean, he and I are we have strong opinions, but I don't feel hot at all under the collar. I don't feel like there's any animosity between us at all. We just,
well, no.
I mean, I think he and I could go out and have a coffee right now. It's all good. So what do you have for us?
Yeah, well, maybe heated was the wrong way.
Yeah.
But I'm just, I'm just thinking kind of, I guess I used to be a believer as well, so I was just kind of thinking, like, what I don't see reasons anymore to believe. So I was wondering if you could give me a reason. What would be the best reasons or proof, I guess, to believe?
Give him a reason, David.
Are you asking me?
Give him a reason to believe.
Because at 10:07 on Tuesday, when your world's falling apart, none of this crap that Seth's talking about works. Just kidding, Seth. Bottom line is this, is that at some point in time, Christianity has to become real. It has to become where it's something, where it happens, where there's something in my life that I cannot explain.
Come on, you're talking like a poet, David. You know, I mean, I appreciate the lofty language, but the truth of it is that, you know, all of this lofty speech about leaning on someone else and all of whatnot, don't change the fact that you're the one who gets up in the morning and does what you do. You're the one who's.
Let me talk to the caller. Tell me your name again.
It's McCade.
McCade, do you ever get up and feel depressed? Do you ever deal with depression? Have you ever dealt with depression in your life?
Say yes.
Well, yes, I've been down on myself.
Just for the sake
before.
of argument, yeah, we've all been there.
Okay. So in answering to your question, what's the one thing that I could say is that what you want at that worst moment is you want the desire, or you have the desire to change that realm or how you're feeling, but you don't have the power. And you know, in the deep down in the back of your mind, if you can crawl up and get out of that, you'll only fall back into it. Mm-hmm. And so the point of it is that really Christianity is not about rules and regulations. It's about having a life where you've got a source that's greater than your own. So here's all I would say to you. Try this. Next time you fall into depression, and you'll feel like a nut doing it, but if you really want to know, if you're really seeking, which I think everybody here is seeking, and that is this, why don't you just ask Jesus? Just say, Jesus, come be my life right now in this moment. Just ask him. Don't ask for his help. Just say, Jesus, come be my life. Come be my thoughts and feelings. Come do for me what I can't do for myself, and see if you get a lift. And if you get a lift, no one can dispute that.
Or
that's an experience that you had.
Or check with your physician about maybe balancing out the serotonin levels in your brain.
Well, yeah.
I gotta move on. I got to move on.
Right.
One more quickly. 347. Thanks for waiting. You're on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Who's this?
Hello?
Hi. Who's this?
Hi, this is Aja. Chef, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you for calling. What do you have for us?
What I wanted to say was that I think the biggest difference between a person of religious persuasion and an atheist is that if they're, and perhaps a scientist as well, is that if tomorrow there was some sort of definitive proof that there was a God, we would all look at it, evaluate it, and if it held up to skepticism, we would say, well, okay, so there is a God, I was wrong, which is something that science rests upon, which is something that I don't think a religious person could do. If there were, which I believe there is, incontrovertible evidence that there is no God, I don't see too many people just saying, you know, although I was one of them, but I don't see too many people just saying, okay, well, I was wrong, there isn't a God. People have an insistence on believing, and I think that's a big difference.
So, did you say it's Audria?
I said Aja.
Aja,
okay. So, Aja, I just from what I know from listening to some of Seth's podcasts and to seeing some of the people who have been in the atheistic movement, it seems like they always have one thing in common. They all started out in Christianity or some kind of religion. And it sounds like you're indicating that as well, that you started out in Christianity and now you found out that you were wrong and you've become an atheist. How do you know you're right?
How do I know I'm right?
How do you know you're not wrong this time too? if you were wrong the time before...
I see no physical evidence to support the proposition that there is some sort of supreme being watching out for me.
What if there were some physical evidence? Would you be wrong?
If there was incontrovertible evidence, as in if God or whoever came down and said, hey, I'm here, get with it, and everyone had seen it, and there was a way to prove that it had happened, I would have to change my mind.
Well, I mean, I guess my point is that there are a lot of people in human history that have seen the same kind of evidence that you have that have received Christ. So it's not like it's just fairy dust that's being thrown on people. I mean, they were mostly on their own, though. I mean, Moses is on the mountain, Muhammad is in the desert. This isn't a mass occurrence where everyone at the same time has seen a particular thing. Well, I'm not exactly sure what you're meaning by that. I don't connect the two on that. But I think my point is that there's from a standpoint of if a person came to a conclusion here at a particular point in their life and then all of a sudden said, no, that's wrong, there's the chance that they could be wrong again. And the point that I make is that there is
that's
enough
true.
evidence.
I see the point you're making. That's true.
And there is enough evidence out there that at least over the last 2,000 years that millions and billions of people have received Christ.
And Allah.
So there is enough. Well, that's true. That okay. If you want to bring the whole God thing into it,
I'm just saying. If you're going to say billions, I'm going to toss the next deity on the list out.
by the way, I think a third of the world is Christian. I believe. I think if you need to recheck your facts.
No, I think you're about right. It's like 2 billion out of 7, something like that. That sounds about right. Yeah.
So my point in that is that if you're wanting incontrovertible
But I have a question for you, David. If there were somehow some sort of incontrovertible proof that there was no God, would you change your mind?
Well, absolutely. But the thing of it is that you can't take my experience away. And I'm not talking about my experience of seeing God or my experience of hearing him or any kind of hocus-pocus thing. I'm talking about my experience of being able to look at it and go, you know what? I'm not controlled by anger like I used to be. I'm not perfect, but I'm not controlled by anger. You know what? I can see the times when I yield to my wife and put her above myself. That's not me. I don't want to do that.
What if it was you, David? I mean, what if it really was? It's you. I mean, no matter what you call it, but it's you really drawing within yourself and being better than you thought you could be, and being.
See, I tried that for so many years, though, Seth. That's that Christian religion. I tried that, and I tried it, and I tried it, and I couldn't do it. That's the thing where I got to the point where I thought, I'm trying.
See, I have no problem. I have no problem carrying myself on myself. In other words, when I wake up in the morning and I don't feel good and I feel horrible, I say to myself, this is just another day and I'll be fine. And I'm fine. And I have dealt with depression and I have been in pretty dark places. And the thing that got me out of there wasn't God, it was science.
This is one of the gripes we have with Alcoholics Anonymous. They tell you that you must rely on a higher power, when the truth of it is that the people who truly recover are the ones who take responsibility for themselves and seek solutions in the physical world.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Well, I had the unfortunate experience of holding my father's dead body in my arms. I was 23, he was 54. He was still a young man, and he died. And I held him in my arms. for many people, the grief of that moment and afterwards makes them cling to some sort of religion, some sort of God. But I was set free by the fact that I didn't. I had to face up to the fact that my father was gone. I knew I wouldn't see him again. And I knew that I had to carry on with myself, on my feet, on my own. And it was very, very, very tremendously difficult. But I got through it, and I didn't need a God to do it.
No, and you're to be commended for that. And people do that all the time in the sense that there are things that they walk through. But here's the thing that I think's in the back of your mind, and that is that you know as well as I do that you're going to get depressed again. And no matter how many times
that's fine, and I can pull myself right back out again the way I did the first time.
Yeah, but let me put it this way.
Life is hard. I'm not afraid of that. Life is painful. I'm not afraid of that. I don't need a God. I don't need a specific sort of self-imposed, invented deity to come to terms with that.
Well, let me put it to you this way. Let's say a person's addicted to pornography, okay? And that guy, and it's a guy, he's addicted to pornography, and he's looking at pornography on the internet, and the doorbell rings, and it's the pastor of the church. So he turns it off. Is that victory? No. Let's say he's up at night, and his wife gets up and comes down the stairs, and he turns it off. Is that victory? No. Is it victory because he turns it off because of the kids? No. It's victory when he turns it off because he wants to, because he doesn't want it anymore. And that's the thing when you're looking at desire and what you want to. You and I don't have any control over that. You want chocolate chip cookies today, you go make them. You didn't think that. That desire just came. And so when you're looking at things
I have many deliciously baked chocolate chip cookies.
All right. But I see her.
When you're looking,
if I may, I think her point is.
Well, let me.
All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, she evaluated where her position was. She knew she was in a valley. She knew that she had gone through a seriously traumatizing emotional time and the loss of a loved one. And she made a personal commitment to herself. Look, I'm going to live on. I'm going to get past my grief. I'm going to reconnect with the world. I'm going to overcome this, which is tremendously admirable. By the way, how you doing today? You doing all right?
I'm doing fantastic.
Good. And, you know, I think we all have our crutches, right? People try different things, do different things. I think religion is quite often a crutch people use to try to cope with whatever. And she decided she was just going to do it. And she made a purposeful decision that she was going to move forward and get out of it slowly, but she made it. And I think that's to be commended. And it shows you how often we underestimate ourselves, you know?
I think it is to be commended. But what I'm saying is that there are going to be things in life that we can't do.
Well, if she falls into depression again, it's not because she failed, is what I'm trying to say.
I'm not saying that. That's not the point. The point is not success.
I was also subject to chronic back pain for many, many years, was disabled. I got a fantastic back surgery, and I'm in one piece. That's not because of a deity. That's because I had a fantastic surgeon who knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah. Thanks for your perspective. I'm going to let David answer that, and I'm going to move on here. I'm running out of time, all right?
Well, I won't. It won't be fair to her.
No. Go ahead. Go ahead. I want to hear your perspective.
Well, my perspective on that is again, it goes back to the Christian religion that things that happen good in your life are because of things that God, or not because God did something for you. It's just because I pulled myself up with my bootstraps. The point in Christianity is, not the Christian religion, the point in Christianity is that there are things in life that are just beyond your ability. Life is going to deal you some things you can't deal with. And it's at that point in time that
but isn't it also...
Hang on, let's let him finish his sentence here very quickly. Life's going to deal you things that you are not able to deal with, right? Is that where you're going?
Yeah, it's at that point, right? It's at that point that I need a life inside of me that's greater than me. If I can't have that life, I don't want anything to do with Christianity. And by the way, no other religion in the world claims that you can invite that you can invite a life into you that will live for you.
We don't see this. Look, we don't see this as a merit. You and I. You and I aren't seeing this as a. No other religion says you can invite an invisible person into your life. Is not necessarily something that I think gives Christianity any more credibility than somebody else. My invisible friend is more credible than your invisible friend is not necessarily a credibility builder in the arena of ideas. I got to move on, okay? I appreciate your call very much, okay?
Okay, thank you so much.
All right. You and I knew we probably weren't going to convince each other. I mean, I
don't think we were even trying to do that, right?
I think it's about exchanging ideas, and I think it's about challenging each other, certainly. I don't know. It's funny how our roads have taken us to a point where we are very different people than we were 10 years ago. And 10 years from now, we may be very, very different people. Life is a journey. And I'll be curious to see where my journey takes me. And I'll be curious to see where your journey takes you. I do want you to know that I have a tremendous amount of respect and admiration for you. I mean, I'm not just blowing smoke at you.
I appreciate that.
I mean, I really do. I really do.
But not if you knew me like I knew.
And it's pretty gutsy to come on the show. I mean, you're talking to a group of infidels, and the fact that you threw yourself out here in the crosshairs to talk about your own personal faith and whatnot, I think it was admirable, and I'm glad you were here. Do you want to finish out with any specific thing that you'd like to leave everyone with? I'll just give you the floor, man. I'm easy.
Well, no. I mean, the only thing that I would say, since you're giving me the floor,
go ahead,
is that at your worst moment, whatever that is, ask Jesus to come be your life and see what happens. I'm not saying invite him into your life. I'm even saying if you exist, come be my life. Come be my patience. Come be my hope. Come be my future. Come be my ability to deal with addiction. Come be my lift in the moment of I'm depressed. Come be for me what I can't be for myself, and see if you get a lift.
Man,
that's all I'm asking.
Man, I'm sorry. You sound like a pastor. I mean, you sound like
I'm not.
I see the podium.
Here's the thing.
I see the microphone. I hear the organ. Just surrender and give your life to Christ. That kind of thing.
Well, no, but you have to remember. Here's where I have a lot of credibility. I'm no different than any of your listeners.
Yeah.
I didn't go to Christian college. I didn't go to I'm not a theologian. I don't have any letters after my name. But there's nothing that gives me any kind of authority. In fact, my thoughts would be looked at in the Christian community because as lesser because I don't have those things. So for me to come to that conclusion is more of a reason, not of me being brainwashed, because at 46 years old, and working in the industry that we worked in, or that you worked in, and that I'm still in, listen, you've seen it all.
Yeah.
In that, you've seen all the contradictions, you've seen all the hypocrisies, you've seen all that stuff. For me to be able to say what I'm saying is because I truly experienced it, not because I'm a pastor. And you know what? I don't care if you receive him, because I think that what he wants more than anything is you to choose. And I think as you make your choice and your listeners make their choice, and I do, and my kids or whomever, that's what he wants. But he wants everybody to have chosen where they want to go.
I'll make this
as far as
guarantee.
Following him or not following.
But just man to man, friend to friend. I'll make this guarantee. Honestly, whatever the truth is, that's what I want to know. If Jesus, if Jesus shows up tomorrow, I've said many times, I'll take down the website. I'll change the name. I'll go out and apologize. Whatever the truth is, wherever it is, however it is, that's pretty much what I want. And so I make you that guarantee from this day, for the last several years, and from this day forward. I just want to find out what is the evidence support, what is true, and whatever that is, I'm all in. Fair enough?
Fair enough. hey, maybe sometime I can come back and we can talk more with your listeners. That's kind of fun at the end.
Yeah, I
regret.
It's funny. I can't remember the last time a 2-hour show flew by. Normally, people are gouging themselves in the eyeballs after about 90 minutes.
Hopefully nobody will say this is boring.
No, I don't. It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. I'm glad you were here, and we'll do a round 2 and make it all about the callers. I think that'd be fantastic. Thanks again, David Stevens, for being my guest tonight.
All right, appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks, Seth.
Join me next week. We're talking to Dale McGowan. He is going to do a show about secular parenting. How do you raise a free thinker? Not an atheist, but somebody who thinks for themselves, who's able to just figure it out. How do you give your kids the tools to develop their own foundation in this crazy world? That's our topic next Tuesday night on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. We'll see you later.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter. Watch dozens of original videos on the Thinking Atheist YouTube channel. And visit our website for resources, links, contact information, the editor's blog, and more. thethinkingatheist.com.